Okay, let me show you guys how you can create a flowbot. So for this, we first go to the settings page right here and then navigate to flowbots, and we'll click on add flowbot to get started. So this is the panel where you will be creating your flowbot, starting with the design phase, basically the part where we create steps and show texts that in the end should be shown to customers. You can make it full screen to make it a bit easier to work with it. Um, but let's dive in. So first of all, on the left side, you'll see steps, and that's basically what the flowbot consists of. So it starts with an initial step, step A, and basically we see that here in the middle. And in a step, we can add content, we can navigate to buttons, which are basically options for customers to select, like a digital choice menu, and also actions in case we want to end the conversation or assign to a team, for example. Now, for the content part, that's the most important part because that's actually what the customer will see. Typically, you will add a lot of text, which is basically the messages that customers will see. But you could also work with videos, images, files, if that's the information you want to show, for example. And also interesting is the user input, where we can request the customer to provide us some information. And this would also then be saved. But let's keep it simple for now and start with a welcome message. Typically, hi, welcome to, and then your company name. How can we help you today? And for the first step, this can already be enough. For my example, it will be, because then we can already give the customer some options to choose from. So again, a flowbot very useful as a digital choice menu to provide them information on frequently asked questions. So as an example, let's do that here as well. Typically, a lot of customers or questions you get will be about delivery times. We also encounter requests for product information, and let's include a step other for now. Now, these will then guide to new steps, which we will need to create here. And as I'm doing this, you'll see on the left side the steps being added. And basically what that means, if a customer would click on delivery times like here, it would go to this step. And then our story begins again, that we can define the content for this step, the buttons and actions to take place. Now, so in this case, a customer chose the option delivery time. So let's give them some information on that. All information on our delivery times can be found here. And then you could place a link, for example. Now, what is also common is that they have track and trace, so let's include it as well. In case you made an order, you can check your track and trace for following your delivery. Now, that should already be quite some information for them to work with, but it's always good to check if this was actually helpful to the customer. So I'm going to add another text and say, did this answer your question, for example. We can then give them two options again. So to the question before, which is basically if this provided the answer to them. So we're going to add steps for in case that was true and if that was not true. And again, we'll need to create new steps for this. So in case this was enough, that's perfect, right? We can end the conversation. Perfect. We will close this conversation. Reach out to us anytime again. It's always important to confirm the action of the customer. So in this case, they said that the information was useful. So then mentioning that we close the conversation always creates the best expectation. So making sure they understand what happens next. In case it wasn't helpful, and that's the beauty of the flowbot, I think, is that we can then still route them to an agent. In the end, we want the customers to be served. So we can say something like, let me put you in contact with one of our agents. they normally get back to you in a few hours. Also good to set expectations, right? Now, if you want to make it more flashy, by the way, you could always add emojis just to spice up the conversation, make it a bit more eye-catching. And in this case, we're gonna assign it to a team. So besides offering them buttons, you could also use actions to end the step. So in this case, we are gonna assign it to a team, but just to show you, this can also be used to attach labels, which can be super interesting to track which topics are chosen in your Flowbot to know which topics basically are most requested. But for now, let's do assign to team. And in this case, we can go to team customer support because it was a question about delivery times. Now, that's in essence how you can create the steps, create buttons, and in the end, actions to finish the step. Um, but as you can see, there's still two steps with missing actions. I won't complete them all for now, but what I do want to show you is that it's good to include a step other or something like speak to an agent. Because although you can tackle a lot of frequently asked questions, there will always be cases where customers cannot help themselves with self-service material and they do need to speak to an agent. So let's do that for step other. As you saw, clicking on these will also guide me to step D in this case, where I can say, um, let me connect you to an agent. They normally get back to you in a few hours. And then the same, we can assign it to the team. Now, a nice addition for this could also be that while assigning it to an agent, you could let the Flowbot already collect customer information that is needed for the agent to solve the case. So to prevent your team from requesting this information while in touch with the customer, you can let the Flowbot do this before the customer gets in touch with an agent. So we could do this by adding user inputs like this one. And as you can see, this is totally configurable in what phrasing I want to use. So what's the message that the customer is going to see, but also in what field this information should be stored and the reply type to make sure we get valid responses. Typically, you will get, or you often need a customer ID or an order ID. So let's make it like that. What is your order ID, for example? Now we're going to save this to ticket. As you can see, you can save it to contact level and ticket level, where ticket will be for the case, this conversation, and the contact being the person. So typically a person can have multiple order IDs. So we're going to collect this also in a separate field, in the ticket field that is. And we're going to call this order ID as well. Now, that's all good. Let's say in my case that order IDs are always in numbers, so we can also make sure that the reply will be a number. And if not, we can give a fallback message saying something like, this does not look like an order ID, please try again, for example. So that's just something I wanted to show you, that you can also route to Teams and request information before doing so. Let's for now finish this step, otherwise it will not allow me to save it. And that concludes the first part. So designing your Flowbot, making sure the content is all there, which means we can move to this next stage, which would be if you scroll down to configure your Flowbot. And these are more backend settings or settings in general for your Flowbot, like the name. So let's call it first Flowbot. And this is perhaps the most interesting part. Here we can select on what channels it should be active. Typically, you want that on WhatsApp or website chat, any kind of messaging channel for which this feature is available. And for website chat, as we can see, there's a small exception that you can add a welcoming text before the first text of the Flowbot, which is already by default quite a good message. And for the rest, we'll see mainly options to transfer either to a team or to the beginning of a flow in case the customer gets stuck in the Flowbot. So it might happen that customers don't understand how to enter in the flow, or they keep entering the wrong details. And this is basically giving them a way out. So we can add keywords, which basically um, make sure that if one of these words are typed by a customer, they will be either transferred to a team, or we can reset them to the beginning of the flow. There's also a message involved. So in case there is, as you can read here, in case there is for the third time an unconfirmed input, you can show this message for them to know which words to write in order to escape the flowbot. Now, that's all some nice details in the backend. And in the end, if you've all reviewed this, you can save and publish it, which is step 3. And in this third step, we'll simply need to publish it. Make sure you click this checkbox, which shows you're aware of the pricing, and then click save. Now, of course, you would need to put it on a channel in order to have it live. But in the end, if you would have placed a channel and publish it, that's the moment this is active on your channel. So if you're not sure yet, you can, like me now, leave this empty, the channel part. So you can actually test it before putting it live. So it is published, but it's not live yet. And what I mean by this is that if I click now on Playground, I can actually test the flow as we created it just now. So this is basically simulating the flowbot. And as we can see, we're now going through our first step, meaning that I need to indicate what I need help with. So let's try the most elaborate flow, which was that I needed information on delivery times, and also the flowbot checking with me if this answered my question. Let's go with no for now. And as then we will see that I'll be put in touch with an agent. So again, this is how you test the conversation in general, and you could always try different routes by starting again. And that basically concludes how to create a flowbot for FAQs. Now, as I said, there's a lot more possible with it, and 2 very well used cases, I think, is for routing to teams. So we did see in the flowbot we created that it can guide to the customer support team, but you might have a landing page for all your teams where customers can reach out to you. And then it could look more like this. So in general, asking why they're reaching out to you and providing them options about having a question and being new and liking product information. These are 2 typical topics that can be separated through customer support and sales. So that's also how we set this up. In case I have a question, you'll be put in touch with one of the customer support agents. Whereas if you say that I'm new, you will be put in touch with sales. Now, the customer would still read that he is going to be put in touch with an agent in either cases. It's just that the team members will be different. So yeah, besides answering FAQs, routing to teams is very effective. And another nice case is the lead generation. So we did see that we can collect information from customers in a flowbot, but you can also take this to a very large extent and basically create a dynamic contact form to collect information and follow up later. So in this case, for lead generation, that's particularly useful because you can collect all kinds of information, like the customer name, of course, the company they're from, their email address, so you can always reach out by email as well, the product they're interested in, the use case, and in the end, then assigning this ticket over to sales, so they will see all this information filled in the flowbot. So 3 very nice cases, I think, tackling FAQs, routing to teams, and a digital form for lead generation, all good cases for the flowbot. And in the end, the sky's the limit. You have all the tools to create it as you wish. So you could also serve all 3 options. You can make it very limited. The power is all yours.